Previously on our Transalp Vs Vstrom test, we spent the day lugging around a very wet English Lake District, getting acquainted with the latest middleweight adventure bikes from Japan. Riding through what would normally be very scenic mountain passes, we ended the day at Askham Beach, which proved to be too much for some of us.
I'm really clear about wanting to get out of here as soon as possible. How does that sound?
Grand plans of wild camping at the top of a tough trail had gone out of the window, and a comparatively luxurious campsite had been sourced with a local pub within striking distance.
So this is us and we've arrived at the campsite.
Now, all we needed to do was pitch our tents.
Whose idea was this?
This was your idea.
It was my idea.
Camping midsummer in the English Lake District, but we're committed and we're doing it. You're a snorer, aren't you?
I am, yeah, bear that in mind. Measured on the Richter scale. Oh, you bugger, look at that, that's done! Never liked you. I'll give you a tenner to put this tent up.
Maybe.
What did he say? Maybe. Kids these days, Mossy, yeah?
I forgot my tent poles once, so I hung it between two bikes.
Pitched, mate. Pitched. Record breaking time.
I say, are you familiar with the expression
Look at the state of that. I'm gonna enjoy the view of watching him fail miserably at pitching his tent. And then anyway, we're gonna go for a couple of beers, really nice English pub meal, and crack on with the adventure again tomorrow. But this campsite and the view, if this mist ever goes, I think it's going to be fantastic. Oh, go on.
All I'll say to you is, who's giving you a lift to the pub?
Well, aye, fair enough.
I do believe abuse will end herewith.
So after a pretty average night's sleep here at the campsite, we woke up to this horrible noise and absolutely lashings of rain. Packing up in this weather is going to be fun. So good morning from Camp Coniston. It's been absolute.
Did you say good morning?
The weather is absolutely shocking. I mean, look at the rain on the tent. It's just been awful all night. And it's pretty miserable, isn't it, Mossy?
As Oliver Hardy used to say, I have nothing to say.
Well, that's a rarity from you, my friend. But look at, I mean, this is just, it's just grim. So there's two pieces of equipment that have been massively helpful over the last couple of days. First one being the Knox Welbeck waterproof jacket and obviously the trousers to match. They've been perfect, kept us totally bone dry underneath at least, and spirits a bit higher than they would have been had we been wet. The next thing that's been really good is actually I've strapped on my Husqvarna luggage, my soft luggage on the sides, side and the top one as well. It's been really fantastic. I've managed to get a full sort of 4-man tent in here, sleeping bag and roll mat, and all my clothes and everything, and it stayed again totally bone dry. So really impressive stuff. And obviously you can't just fit it on just the Husqvarna, you can fit it on a Honda too. We're just about to get packed up and then we'll get on our route again. With wet tents packed away, it was time to crack on with our test. This time the Geordie was on the Transalp and I'd be swinging a leg over the V-strom for the first time. At this point, we should also mention about the control tyres fitted to the bikes. From previous experience on our Super Adventure bike test last year, the tyres fitted made a critical difference to the performance on the day. Therefore, for this test, we decided to fit Dunlop Trail Max Raid tyres to both machines. With genuine 50-50 off-road to on-road capability, high silica compound for great wet weather performance, they appeared to be the perfect option. In reality, they delivered big style. Excellent wet grip and confidence on the road, and very good levels of off-road grip for an adventure tyre. They really were the perfect match for both of these bikes. That was thoroughly miserable, packing up the tents in lashing down rain.
I've had better times.
It's just everything's wet, but we're still having a good time, Mossy, aren't we?
As soon as we got on the bikes, it was great, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was great.
As soon as we got on the bikes.
And we've had a bit of a switch round, haven't we? So I've been on the V-strom this morning, you've been on the Transalp.
What do you think?
Initial impressions, very, very good, actually.
Are you surprised?
Yeah, I am.
Okay.
I am. I don't know why. I didn't have great expectations for this Suzuki.
Yep. Tell me what you like.
Like, really gutsy motor. It's got loads of drive from the bottom end, like loads. The other big thing that jumped out straight away, and considering it's obviously terribly wet as well, is the front end feeling that I got from this was better than the Transalp. I felt more connected. I knew what the front end was doing.
Yep.
I could go into corners more confident. I'd get round.
You looked really happy on it, you know, straight away.
I just feel that there's more weight on the front end. I feel it's a bit more less motocrossy, you know, with the handle bar high up, not knowing what's going on. It feels a bit more sporty. That's my opinion. What's your opinion on the Transalp so far?
Again, like you, I was a bit surprised. It's a very agreeable motorbike, isn't it? It's very likeable. It's very easy. You need to rev this harder to make it go as fast, and that agility just gives it a sportier feel.
Yeah, okay.
Screen is in a different league.
Oh, way better on the Transalp.
It's absolutely rubbish on this Suzuki on a day like today.
Yeah. Right, so the plan for the rest of the day, we're going to continue riding some of these beautiful roads. Hopefully, you'll be able to see some of the backdrop and some of this mist moves, because it's absolutely shocking.
Do you think we might meet Noah anywhere en route?
Before we set off, I was keen to give a bit of a reality check. So it's actually really interesting the way that both of these motorcycles are marketed, and certainly if you look at the manufacturer imagery and video content, they'd almost put these bikes out like they were kind of some sort of dual sport bike. Perfectly able off-road and very capable on-road as well. But definitely it's fair to call out that there are some compromises. Certainly if we look at the Honda, some of the big things that are missing in my opinion from standard trim are handguards. There is no handguards on this bike, so you know obviously that's going to make your levers more vulnerable. There is absolutely nothing on the sump guard to protect it there. That sump is quite vulnerable, and we are doing some off-roading later, so you know we're really praying that we don't whack that, because that's quite vulnerable. The other thing, it's got a welded on subframe, so if you're to clatter into that and bend it, you know we're probably looking at a new frame, so or a write-off job, which is obviously not particularly clever. Now we're going to swing over to the Suzuki and look at some of the issues that this one's got. This one actually does have a sump guard, which is an improvement over the Transalp, but basically it's made out of about 1mm thick plastic and really not up to the job, especially when you're thinking about putting a 230 kilo bike onto it. Also, the hand guards that it comes with, yeah, they're more weather protection really rather than actual protection. But it has got some improvements in the subframe because it's actually a bolt-on one. So if you do whack into it, you should be able to replace it fairly easily at your local dealership. So calling out those limitations isn't really a criticism, it's just an acknowledgement that these are not thoroughbred off-road motorcycles. You know, you've got to pick your terrain carefully. You've got to be aware that these are big motorcycles, and actually they are quite fragile as well. So you've always got to bear that in mind with an adventure bike, and even though these are middleweight adventure bikes, you've still very much got to be careful with them, and you know, pick your terrain and be ultimately aware of what they're capable of and perhaps what they're not capable of too. We then spent the next few hours riding over some of the beautiful Lake District. Over Kirkstone Pass, twisting through the sweeping roads along Ullswater as we headed to our next trail, the Old Coach Road, as we prepared to bring our test to a head. Both bikes are equally frugal, but the V-strom does benefit from a larger fuel tank. This meant it didn't need a top-up of fuel before our next location, whereas the Honda did. It's really not a big deal, but it is certainly noteworthy.
Water splash.
Thankfully, the terrain that we rode on the Old Coach Road made the standout characteristics of both machines instantly apparent. For the Transalp, its 20 kilo advantage over the V-strom was very obvious, as was its ability to flick from line to line and be the more playful off-road tool.
But it's definitely, it is lighter and more flickable on this Transalp. Immediately I don't like the stood up position as much as I do on the V-strom.
Oof, you bugger. Right. I'll probably slow it down a bit, as I'm old and wise. The tyres feel good. This is just the sort of surface, or off-road surface for him at least.
Its excellent turning circle and an almost unstallable motor made low speed work and turning mid-trail a doddle and very confidence inspiring. I think with the right protection and a proper sump guard fitted, the Transalp would have been capable of much more technical and difficult terrain than we put it on.
First impressions are it's kind of almost as confidence inspiring as it is on road to what it is on a bit of gravel too. Nice suspension for it, very smooth and easy to use. Oh, this is perfect terrain for the V-strom.
Right, Aaron says this is fantastic, so let's see if he's telling porkies. I think this suspension feels a bit better on this thing, and I quite like the responsive nature of the motor as well.
Conversely, the extra timber that the V-strom is packing, combined with a stall-happy clutch action and a worse turning circle to make it the more awkward motorcycle at low speed. But it soon comes into its own once it's rolling. The smooth and drivable engine is complemented with an unbelievably plush suspension setup, which almost made it feel barge-like as it sailed over rocks and through puddles. On this very specific type of terrain, the V-strom is more refined and the more comfortable motorcycle, even if its operating window is narrower than the Honda's.
Yeah, not bad off the rocks even.
So, big question. 2 days in the Lake District on this big adventure. Have they been fun? You bet they have. Look, despite the fact it chucked it down, despite the fact I fell off, despite the fact I just hated life momentarily on that campsite, overall, in the whole scheme of things, none of that matters because we've just had a properly good time on 2 really impressive motorbikes. Aaron, your views, sir?
Well, the fact that the bikes have facilitated that good time, I think that's the standout feature for me.
They've gone to a lot of different places, haven't they?
Yeah, they have, yeah, and that's, I guess that's what a middleweight adventure bike is like. You know, it's capable of strapping all of your luggage on. Both of them have done a really good job of that. They've both been, you know, not the Titanic when they have been loaded up. You could still do some stuff. We did power slides on the beach with all the luggage on, which I thought was really impressive. And I have to say, I think both bikes did a really, really good job. I mean, Mossy, what's been your favourite or standout features for each different bike? Let's start with the Honda. Start with the Honda.
Just its overall civility and the way that it works as a package. There's nothing wrong with it, is there? You know, it's a bit hard to fault. Look, you could say the suspension's a bit boingy a little bit, but it's been all right along here. You could say that, you know, you could do with a bit more bottom end torque in the motor, given what it is. But all in all, I think that is a surprisingly likeable and very manageable real-world motorbike.
Standout features for me on the Honda are the high-performance motor. When you start getting it spinning up, you know, it's a playful motor. It's good. It's smooth. It's nice to use.
It's more agile,
flickable, more manageable motorcycle than the Suzuki. It's 20 kilos lighter. You know, and you definitely are aware of that.
Big stuff,
and that actually combines with the turning circle, which is a fair bit tighter on this as well.
This Suzuki's a bit too tall for me, by the way, and I like that aspect of the Honda a lot more.
Absolutely perfect. Look at these scenes, man.
So I've had me 2 penneth on the Honda. What do you think of this Suzuki?
Really impressive motorcycle. I mean, despite there being a bit of a discrepancy on the spec sheet in terms of power, wow, you jump on the Suzuki, it's got a really gutsy motor, you know, blind test, you know, and so on. You'd actually think that the Suzuki had more power. It's certainly got more guts off the bottom end. It's really strong motor, very characterful. I preferred the front end feeling on the Suzuki. I was dead confident just like chucking it into corners, even in the wet. It was fantastic. Obviously that pairs up with the Dunlop tyres, which have been top notch. But I think the handling package of the Suzuki is really impressive. The suspension feels really good, really plush. And I'm a massive fan of the way that you navigate through the electronics. You just turn the traction control off, simple button while you're riding. There's no menus to scroll through. I think it's a really comprehensively very strong motorcycle.
I just like the fact that this bike's got superiorities in just the right places for me. The motor's much more real world, you know. It's just there all the time, you know. I think it makes this bike, I really do. That and the suspension. Aaron, we like both of these bikes, but they're not all perfect. Anything you don't like about each one of them?
I think the Honda, for me, like the electronics could be better developed. Like the gravel mode doesn't work. It didn't work for me on the beach at all. And the off-road ABS as well, you can't skid the rear within that. I didn't find a setting that we could do that with this bike. And it's quite difficult to go through and change your settings. So that's, for me, is one area I don't like about the Honda.
Anything that doesn't come up to scratch for you on the Suzuki?
I think it's a little bit heavier. You know, so we've called that out already. 20 kilos heavy, you do feel that. The screen, definitely not as good as this. This is a massively effective screen. Yeah. Anything you don't like, Mossy?
I'll start with that. That is utterly rubbish. Utterly rubbish. Too small, doesn't work. Don't like the fact that each bike has inner tubes in it, you know? If they were tubeless and we got a puncher out here, we could plug it and go. You can't do that with a tube. Real oversight, I think. This bike's a bit tall for me, but that's hardly a problem with the bike. That's a problem with me, isn't it, really? And the clutch biting point is a bit too sharp as well, but we're talking details now. All in all, if I get a bigger screen and a slightly lower seat, I'll be pretty much made up with it, you know?
Yeah, the thing you've got to be careful of is a sudden change in terrain type. Big hole, drop off, et al. And you suddenly might have a big fat heavy motorbike to deal with that doesn't want to play ball.
Can I ask you a more important question, sir?
Yeah.
If it was your money, which one of these two would you shell out for?
My preference, probably, if I had to put my money down on a motorcycle between these two, probably choose the Suzuki. I like the way it looks. I like the way it rides. I think it handles a little bit better, and I really like that bottom end. What about you, Mossy?
Same decision for the same reasons, but if I had that Transalp, you know, if that was a long-termer, for instance, I would not be disappointed at all. two very similar bikes trying to do the same thing, but in a different fashion. Achieving the same thing, in fact, in a different fashion.
And I think that point about if you had either one, you'd be really happy. I was on this yesterday. I was loving having a mess around with it. I love the agility. I love the flickability, the spinning it around in the road, pulling a couple of wheelies, so on and so forth. This worked really well for that. I jumped on that, different animal, bit more refined maybe. Okay, so look, we've got two massively impressive middleweight adventure bikes here, way better than I thought they would be. So, you know, they both get a big thumbs up from me on that front. I think they do from Mossy too.
I would just like 1,000 miles of routes like this, please.
Absolutely. So on that note, we're going to draw it to a close. Really hope you've enjoyed watching this video. Please like, comment and subscribe. Check out all the Knox gear that we've used to protect ourselves on test, and we'll see you on the next one. The conclusion to our bike test brought out some conclusions on the bikes themselves, some of which will be more important to you than others, depending on which side of the fence you sit on. But for me, this test did more than make just one bike a winner. In the motorcycle world, sports bikes are about going fast. Super Nakeds are about maximum thrills and outright fun. But the middleweight adventure bikes in this test are about something different. They're about experiencing different places, in all weathers, turning a simple ride out into a trip, and most importantly, they're about making memories that last a lifetime.
Like, well, all of a sudden, these rugby bars were like, way. You alright?
Are you recording, Pete?
I am.
Mr. Moss finish his off and then we're going to go for a beer.
You haven't got the patience to watch me.
Okay, well, you're going to see us very soon.
Bye-bye now. Right.
Is that okay, Pete? Or... Look at, I mean, this is just, it's just grim. What on earth are you doing?
Yeah. Should I turn this off? I'll pause it at least. Bottom.